There is a kind of love that never announces itself. It does not arrive with flowers. It does not come with speeches. It does not ask to be recognized or celebrated or remembered. It wakes up at 4:30 in the morning. It works 2 jobs and still comes home and asks how your day was. It skips meals so you don't have to. It wears the same coat for 7 winters so that you can have something new. It sits at the kitchen table after you have gone to sleep and stares at numbers that do not add up and finds a way somehow, every single time, to make them add up. It does not call itself sacrifice. It just calls itself Tuesday. Today we are going to talk about a woman you may think you know. A woman who raised a son alone. A woman who had no money, no map, no guarantee that anything would work out. A woman who taught her child something that no school, no university, no institution of power has ever been able to teach. She taught him what it actually costs to build a life worth living. And that son, that boy who watched his mother pour herself out like water on dry ground, grew up to stand in front of the entire world and say her name with the kind of reverence that most people reserve for sacred things. Her name was Ann, and her son's name was Barack. Let me take you back. The year is 1960. A young white woman from Wichita, Kansas, 18 years old, brilliant, curious, quietly rebellious, against a world that had already decided what she was supposed to be, falls in love with a man from Kenya. His name is Barack Obama Sr. He is electric. He is ambitious. He is the kind of man who fills a room without trying. They marry. They have a son, and then he leaves. The boy is 2 years old when his father walks out of his life. 2 years old. Not old enough to understand. Not old enough to ask why. Just old enough to grow up in the specific silence that an absent father leaves behind. And Ann Dunham, this 18-year-old girl from Kansas who chose love over convention and paid the price that the world so often charges for that choice, is left alone with a son, with almost nothing else. And here is where most stories would write her off. Here is where the world would look at this young single mother with a biracial child in 1960s America and quietly decide that her story was already written, that the ending was already known, because Ann Dunham did something that the world's narrative did not account for. She refused to become the ending the world had written for her. She went back to school. She studied. She earned a PhD in anthropology. She worked in international development. She lived in Indonesia, in Hawaii, in places that a woman from small-town Kansas was not supposed to go. She learned languages. She asked questions that made powerful people uncomfortable. She built a life with the materials the world had left her, which were fewer than she deserved and more than enough for a woman of her particular courage. And through all of it, through every degree and every journey and every year of building something from what should have been nothing, she raised a son. She raised him to read. She woke him at 4:30 in the morning to give him extra lessons before school, because she couldn't afford the schools where the other American children went. And when he complained because he was a child, and children complained, she looked at him with those clear Kansas eyes and said words he would never forget. She said, "This is no picnic for me either, Buster. That is not a small thing." That is one of the most important sentences ever spoken, because in that sentence, in that quiet, tired, unapologetic sentence, Ann Dunham taught her son the first great lesson of his life. She taught him that sacrifice is not martyrdom, that doing hard things is not the same as suffering, that you can pour yourself out completely for something you love and still be clear-eyed about the cost and still choose it anyway every single day without needing anyone to applaud you for it. She did not perform her sacrifice. She did not weaponize it. She did not hold it over her son's head like a debt he owed her. She simply lived it, day after day, year after year, without fanfare, without an audience, without any guarantee that it would matter. That is the first lesson we need to carry with us today. Real sacrifice does not announce itself. We live in a world that celebrates the visible, the dramatic, the sacrifice that has a camera on it. We share the highlight reel of our giving, the charity photo, the public gesture, the sacrifice that comes with a story we can tell at dinner. But the sacrifice that actually changes lives happens in the dark. It happens at 4:30 in the morning when nobody is watching. It happens in the years when nothing looks like it is working. It happens in the private decision, made quietly and kept fiercely, to keep going when every reasonable voice in the world is telling you that you have already given enough. Ann Dunham gave in the dark for decades. and the world was changed by what grew in that darkness. Now I want to talk to you about something that Barack Obama has said in speeches, in interviews, in the quiet, honest moments when the political armor comes off and the sun speaks instead of the president. He has said more than once that the most important person in his life was his mother. Not a mentor, not a professor, not a political idol. His mother. The woman who had no power in the traditional sense, no title, no platform, no seat at the table of the world's important rooms. Just a relentless, private, daily commitment to raising a human being who understood what it meant to live for something larger than himself. And here is what we need to understand about that. Success, real success, the kind that lasts and the kind that matters, is almost never built by the person who receives the credit. It is built by the people who showed up before the credit existed. It is built in the years before anyone is watching. In the kitchens and the classrooms and the 4:30 mornings. In the choices made by people whose names history will not always remember, but whose influence is written into everything that history celebrates. Ann Dunham will never be as famous as her son. But Barack Obama will tell you, has told anyone willing to listen, that without her there is no him. Without her there is no Harvard, no community organizing on the south side of Chicago, no Senate seat, no Grant Park on the night of November 4, 2008, when 240,000 people gathered not just to witness an election, but to witness what is possible when someone refuses to let the world's small expectations define the size of their future. Without that woman waking up at 4:30 in the morning in a modest Hawaiian home, without that sacrifice that called itself Tuesday, none of it exists. That is the second lesson. The people who change the world are almost never the ones who do it alone. Behind every person who stands in the light, there is someone who carried them through the darkness. Behind every story of individual triumph, there is a story of collective sacrifice that the triumph was built upon. Behind every name that history remembers, there are names that history forgets. Names that deserved more than forgetting. Names that were the foundation of everything. Look at your own life. Think about the person who woke up early for you, who skipped something they wanted so you could have something you needed, who believed in you before you gave them any evidence that their belief was warranted, who held the weight of your becoming when you were too young or too lost or too broken to hold it yourself. Who is that person for you? Because here is what I know. They exist. They exist in every life, in every story, in every version of a human being who manages to rise above what the world gave them. Someone paid for the rising. Someone carried the cost. And most of the time, they carried it quietly, without complaint, without scorecard, without demanding that you acknowledge the size of what they gave. The least we can do is see it. The least we can do is name it. Obama named it, publicly, repeatedly, with a tenderness that you do not often see from the most powerful office in the world. He named it when his mother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in 1995, the same year his memoir was published. He named it when she died, too young, at 52 years old, before she could see most of what her sacrifice had grown into. He named it in the speeches where his voice changed slightly, where the president receded and the sun appeared, where you could hear in the careful, measured cadence something that was grief and gratitude wound together so tightly they could not be separated. He named it because she deserved to be named. And here's the third lesson. Gratitude is not a feeling. It is a practice. It is a choice you make before the person you are grateful for is gone. We are so good at the eulogy. We are so practiced at the beautiful words at the end, the speeches at the funeral, the tributes after the death, the public declarations of love and debt that come when it is too late for the person receiving them to hear. We are not nearly as good at the living gratitude, the gratitude that is expressed before the loss. The phone call made tonight instead of next week. The conversation that says, "I see what you did for me, and I am not going to wait until you are gone to tell you that it changed everything." Ann Dunham died before her son became president. She never saw Grant Park. She never stood in the White House. She never watched the world receive what she had spent her life building. Let that sit for a moment. Let that be the thing that moves you to action. Not tomorrow, not when things settle down, not when you have the right words, but now, today. Before the 4:30 mornings of someone who loves you become a memory instead of a present reality, you can still reach out and touch. Tell them now. Now I want to speak to the ones among you who are the Ann Dunhams of someone's story, the single mothers, the fathers working double shifts, the grandparents who stepped in when the parents couldn't, the older siblings who gave things up so the younger ones could have more, the quiet givers whose sacrifice has no podium and no audience and no headline. I want to speak directly to you. What you are doing is not invisible to the universe even when it is invisible to the world. The 4:30 mornings matter. The skipped meals matter. The years of holding things together with whatever you have while the world looks elsewhere, and the account balance stays impossible and the exhaustion is so deep it has become the water you swim in. All of it matters. You are building something. You may not see it yet, you may not live to see all of it. Ann Dunham didn't. But you are building something that the world will not be able to ignore forever. Because here's the truth that the story of Barack Obama and Ann Dunham carries in its bones. Sacrifice is never wasted. Not the real kind. Not the kind that comes from love and not from performance, not the kind that asks nothing in return. Not the kind that keeps showing up even when nothing is working, and the night is long, and the numbers do not add up, and the child you are pouring yourself out for does not yet understand what they are receiving. That sacrifice compounds, like interest, like roots spreading underground, like something growing in the dark that the surface has not yet learned to see. It compounds until one day, not always the day you expect, not always in the form you imagined, it breaks the surface. And the world looks at what emerged and calls it remarkable, and you, if you are still there to see it, will know the truth. You will know that what the world is calling remarkable is simply what love looks like when it refuses to stop. The fourth lesson: success is not what you achieve. It is what you build in others. Ann Dunham had a PhD. She had a remarkable career. She had a mind that could dismantle assumptions and rebuild understanding from scratch. By any measure, she was a success in her own right. But the fullest expression of her life, the thing that her sacrifice was quietly and powerfully pointed toward, was not her own achievement, it was his. And that is not a diminishment of her. That is not the world reducing a brilliant woman to her role as someone's mother. That is the opposite. That is the recognition that choosing to pour yourself into another human being fully, deliberately at great personal cost is not a smaller ambition than building your own name. It is a larger one. It is the ambition that says the most important thing I can leave behind is not a title or a building or a line in a history book with my name on it. The most important thing I can leave behind is a person who carries what I taught them into rooms I will never enter, a person who speaks with a voice that was shaped by my voice, a person who sees the world with eyes that were trained by my eyes, a person who knows it in their body, not just their mind, what sacrifice looks like, what it costs, what it is worth, a person who, when they stand in front of the world, thinks of me. Obama thinks of her. You can see it in the way he speaks about her, in the policies he fought for, in the quiet personal conviction that ran beneath the political career like an underground river, the conviction that the people who are left behind, who are working without safety nets, who are building lives from insufficient materials in a world that does not always notice, and that those people matter, that their stories count, that the 4:30 mornings of the invisible deserve the same dignity as the spotlit moments of the powerful. He learned that from her. She gave him the eyes to see it. And now the final lesson, and it is the most important one. The story is not over until you decide it is. Ann Dunham was 18 years old, alone with a baby and no map. The world had a very clear story written for her. A short story, a quiet story, a story that ended somewhere small and stayed there. She rejected that story. Every single day she rejected it. Not with a dramatic declaration, not with a speech or a manifesto or a moment the world would remember. He rejected it by getting up, by doing the work, by refusing to let the size of her beginning determine the size of her becoming. And you sitting with this right now, carrying whatever you are carrying, looking at whatever gap exists between where you are and where you know you are supposed to be, you have the same choice she had every single morning. The world has a story written for you. It was written by your circumstances, your zip code, your family history, your bank account, your past mistakes, the people who left and the opportunities that didn't come in, the doors that closed before you could get through them. That story is not yours unless you accept it. Ann Dunham did not accept it. She picked up her son and She picked up her books and she woke up at 4:30 in the morning and she built a different story, word by word, day by day, 4:30 morning by 4:30 morning, until the story she built was so undeniable that the world had no choice but to recognize it. You can do the same, not because your story will look like hers, not because your son or daughter will become president, not because the scale of what you build will be measured in electoral votes or newspaper headlines or the roar of 240,000 people in a Chicago park at night, but because the principle is the same, the sacrifice is the same, the 4:30 morning is the same. The refusal, that quiet, daily unwitnessed refusal to let absence and difficulty in the world's low expectations determine the ceiling of your life. That refusal is the same. So here is what I am asking you to do. Not tomorrow. Not when things are easier. Not when you feel more ready or more rested or more certain that it will work. Now, go tell the Ann Dunham in your life that you see them. Go pour yourself out for the person who is counting on you the way Obama counted on his mother. Not with fanfare, not for credit, but because that is what love actually looks like when it is serious. Go reject the story the world wrote for you. Go wake up at whatever your 4:30 morning is and do the work that nobody is watching. And trust, the way Ann Dunham trusted, that what is being built in the dark will eventually break into the light. She never saw Grant Park, but Grant Park happened because of her. Your 4:30 morning is happening because of someone. Make sure it is happening for someone too. That is what a single mother from Kansas taught the world about sacrifice. That is what she taught her son. That is what her son taught us. And now, right now, it belongs to you. Go be someone's Ann Dunham. The world is waiting for what you are building.